So when we take a look at stuff like this, we need to take a look and see what the cost impacts are. And that's the reason why a lot of jurisdictions are slow to adopt new codes. There's jurisdictions out there that are still in the 2008 code. There's ones that are in the 2011 code. Some are still in the 2014, because in the 2017 they added some requirements for AFCI stuff, which added a lot of cost impact to it, right? And then there's some states like Oklahoma, Texas, things like that, that will adopt the latest code pretty much as soon as it comes out or shortly thereafter, all right? And so a lot of the states that are dragging their feet on this stuff, they're taking a look at the economic impact of this stuff, all right? And they're saying, I'm not quite sure if we want to do this because this is going to cost a lot of money to the homeowner, okay? So this particular report here that's pictured up on the screen that I'm going to talk about here was prepared by the National Association of Home Builders, or the NAHB, okay? And this was to give us an idea of the impact of some of these 2023 code changes. So specifically what they're going to talk about is the stuff that's going on here in Article 210, all right? There's some ancillary stuff in there as well, but primarily what they're talking about is the stuff that happens here in Article 210. And so what they have is they have these reference houses, okay? So reference house number 1 says, hey, I got a 2,607 square foot dwelling unit, right? It's built on slab. It's a single story. It's got 3 bedrooms, right? 2-car garage, 2 bathrooms, right? And so, does it have a laundry room or closet? Yes, it does, right? And so houses 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the same as far as square footage are concerned, but their methods of construction, whether they're built on slab or basement, whether they're 3 or 4 bedrooms, whether they're 2 baths or 2.5 baths or 3 baths, right? That's all the variables that are listed on there. And then they said, okay, well, houses are great, but what's our impact on multifamily houses? All right? And so since it's the National Association of Home Builders, they didn't really care too much about the commercial buildings, right? And so they looked at a 19,500 square foot multifamily type dwelling, right? And then a 43,000 square foot one and a 44,000 square foot one with 48 units, right? And then they have a big one, 462,000 square foot, and then they have a typical townhouse, right, with a shared wall. And so what they did is they took a look at these various different applications and they said, okay, 2023 code changes, what kind of economic impact is that going to have? And so they developed this chart by going through and just running the numbers, right? And so this chart talks about the impact of each of these things. Now, some of the impacts of these, the stuff that's in red and parentheses, actually is a money saver, right? And then some of this stuff is actually stuff that's going to cost us money. So the stuff in black, that's going to cost us money. The stuff in red is going to save us money here. So our impact for the reference house number 1, GFCI for kitchen, we're going to have to spend another $36 based off of, I believe they use the Dallas marketplace for this. For the GFCIs for specific appliances, remember we had the clothes dryers, we had the cooking equipment, stuff like that. That adds $346 to it, right? Outdoor outlets, there's actually a provision in 210.8F that allows us not to have GFCI on HVAC equipment installed outside. So that was a money savings, right? The garage branch circuit, receptacles in kitchens or islands and peninsulas, kitchen receptacle outlet locations, right? Changes to protective devices, things like that. Load calculations didn't have any impact in there. There is a difference in load calculations. We'll talk about that here in the next video. But you can see reference house number 1, you're going to spend $308 total extra, right? Number 2 was $675, $657, $345, right? And then reference buildings that we have in here, reference building number 4, you can see there's a big negative impact financially here. It's going to cost us $94,000 extra, right? And so these code changes, they don't take them lightly. They want to go ahead and adopt stuff that makes sense, right? And all this stuff is really to help save lives, right? And so you got to weigh the cost against that $675 that you're going to spend on reference house number 2 and decide, well, is that worth it, right? How many lives is this going to save? So this is decisions that lawmakers need to make that I definitely don't want to make as far as that's concerned. They're saying, we understand that this is going to have an impact. It's just how much of an impact is that going to have and how much good is that going to do, right? So like, excuse me, on our AFCI receptacles, we're trying to keep the house from burning down, right? And so our AFCI circuits and things like that we implemented in earlier codes, those had an economic impact. It was about $1,000 a house on average, various different studies. But it was a life-saving thing, right? It was a property-saving thing. And so they decided, well, let's go ahead and adopt that. But some states said, no, we don't want to adopt that. We don't want to make that call, right? And so that's basically what this is. It's a cost basis change. So I'm going to go over each of these different regulations and what the impact is, what they're for, what the change is, and things like that. So Code Section 210.8a deals with a requirement for receptacles in the entire kitchen, as well as in any area with a sink or permanent provisions for food preparation or beverage preparation or cooking to have GFCI protection. Previously, it only applied to kitchen receptacles, so we have an added cost involved in that. 210.8d, that was our change for serving specific appliances, right? And so the tire inflation machines, vending machines, sub pumps, dishwashers, those all had to have it before. But now we've added items 8 through 10, which is our counter-mounted cooking units, wall-mounted ovens, electric ranges, microwave ovens, things like that. They're all required to have GFCI protection where they weren't required to before. 210.8F, 210.8F, that is going to be our GFCIs for outdoor outlets. And it says this change actually delays the requirement for air conditioning and heat pump outdoor units to have GFCI protection, kicks it down the road to September 1st, 2026. And so that's actually a negative. It actually pulls money out of there because I'm not required to, until September 1st of 2026, have those GFCI protected outlets for that HVAC equipment. It says it should be noted that similar change was also made in 2020 via TIA, or Tentative Interim Amendment, that went into effect on September of 2022. They said, let's take that, let's delay that out to 2026. And so the cost impact of that actually made things go down. 210.11C4, that is our requirement for branch circuits in the garage. It says this change clarifies that additional branch circuits beyond the one required in G1 are permitted. It also allows additional equipment to be supplied by the required circuit in garages with single vehicle bay, as long as the rating of such equipment does not exceed the limits of 210.23 B1 and B2. So a lot of assumptions are made here. Okay, we're adding additional equipment, and that's going to require an additional branch circuit in there, or receptacle, or whatever. So there's additional requirements in there that are just kind of made up in this circumstance. When people do studies, they always want to follow their narrative, right? What do they want the data to say? The truth is probably somewhere in between all this stuff, right? They're saying, oh, let's do our best job that we can when we're taking a look at this and say what is typical, but they're making up what is typical, right? What's typical for your house and my house may be two different things. 210.52C2, it removes a requirement for providing receptacles to serve the countertop and work surfaces on kitchen islands and peninsulas, but requires provisions for receptacles in the future, right? And so that's going to result in a net savings of about $20 on a single-family dwelling unit, right? So we don't have to have the receptacle. We just need to have provisions to add that in the future. And then 210.52C3, that change requires that those receptacle outlets be installed in, on, or above the countertops. And previously, it allowed the receptacle outlets to be installed not more than 12 inches below the countertop or work surface, okay? So that is a change to the code that we had in there that said we can't install those below the countertop or work surface. I actually had that up on the graphic, but I did not speak to that before. Basically what that is that requires, used to be that I could have the receptacles on or above or below the countertop. Now they're saying it needs to be on or above. So those ones below the countertop are going to cost less than something that's going to be installed in the countertop. All right? Now, if I'm going to install stuff in the countertop, it's going to be expensive, right? And so those receptacle outlet locations, I'm going to need some sort of pop-up and things like that. Those are a couple $100 a piece, right? And so they're saying, hey, that's going to have quite the impact in there. Reference house number 2 or 3, they're going to add 2 or 3 of those things into the equation there and pull out the ones that they had down below the countertops. So they're making some pretty big assumptions in there that have quite a bit of impact on the overall price. If that $464 on reference house number 2, $464 of that is wrapped up in this. You don't have to install these things in the countertop, right? You can do them above the countertop. Just put another one in above the backsplash or whatever, and you're still going to be code compliant on there and at a economic impact that's going to be a net zero, not adding $464 to it. So I kind of take objection to that, and that's a big part of these equations. If you take a look at our commercial building, or I'm sorry, our large apartment building that we had on there, you can see that $54,000 of that economic impact, of that $94,000, right? Over half of it is related to these pop-up receptacles. So that's an area where I'm going to disagree with this report, but you know, I really respect the National Association of Home Builders, but they're just trying to kind of give you a worst case scenario on what the economic impact is. On your particular projects, it's probably going to be a couple $100 on a house, right? It's not going to be, you know, $675 because you just make the decision not to have a pop-up receptacle. You just move that into the backsplash area, right? And so that's where I disagree with this report. 230.67, we haven't covered this, but we will. It requires surge protected devices to have a nominal discharge current rating of not less than 10 kiloamps, right? And so our SPDs were added to the NEC in the 2020 edition, but it never specified exactly at what level. So they're doing an assumption here that before you were installing 5s, now you're installing at least 10s, right? And so the economic impact of that's $30, not huge, and it may not even be an issue for you if you were installing 10s before, right? But they're saying the minimum wasn't listed in there, and they're assuming you were doing a 5, right? And so again, this may be one that I disagree with the economic impact of that because that may not even be an issue on what you're currently installing, all right? And so all that stuff does have an impact. It's just a question on a case-by-case basis exactly how much impact that's going to have, all right? But it isn't necessarily as radical as that report from the Home Builders Association, all right? Maybe less than that, or you may just make different decisions. Let's move into Article 215, which is feeders, okay? 215 feeders, again, we got a new section in here,